Hello, welcome to Healthy Kingston, a health promotion and wellness program of the Kingston Board of Health. I'm Janet Wade, your host. This month we're focusing on Alzheimer's. Make you aware that November is actually the Alzheimer's Caregivers Awareness Month. We are all familiar with dementia, and Alzheimer's is a dementia-related disease. I have two experts here who are going to be talking to us about Alzheimer's disease, what it is, how it's managed, and they have firsthand knowledge. We have a caregiver here from Kingston who will be speaking on how he took care of his wife the last 5 years who had Alzheimer's. But I first want to tell you about the Alzheimer's Association. It's a nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's disease research. Its mission is to, quote, eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research and to provide and enhance care and support for families who are affected, and to also reduce the risk of dementia through the promotion of brain health. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Hoadley, who's the regional manager of Southeastern Massachusetts Alzheimer's Association, as well as a local resident, Bob Kostka, who cared for his wife who had Alzheimer's and for the past 5 years and passed this past January. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
First, I'd like to ask you, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? I alluded to it, but I'd like you to get more specific.
Sure, yeah, that's a common question that we get. We tend to start every education program with the answer to that. So Alzheimer's, so dementia is this umbrella term, and Alzheimer's lives under that umbrella. Mainly, the term dementia means a decline in cognitive functioning that's going to impact somebody's memory, thinking, and behavior. It's not truly a diagnosis, though. People sometimes will leave their doctor's office and call us and say, I was diagnosed with dementia. It's really just acknowledging that they have this decline in cognitive functioning. But we urge people to find out why. What is the cause? What is the reason for this decline in cognitive functioning? Alzheimer's disease tends to be the most common reason why, but there are other reasons too. So there's like frontotemporal type dementia, there's Lewy body type dementia, vascular type dementia, and then there's also treatable forms of dementia, something like a urinary tract infection, or if somebody's experiencing thyroid issues that aren't being managed, depression. There's a lot of things that can exhibit those symptoms of dementia that can be reversed. So just a little plug, it's really important to talk to your doctor to figure out what it is that is the cause, because if it can be reversed, great. If it can't, then at least you know what it is that you're dealing with, so you can then tackle it in the best way possible.
Sure. Okay, Jennifer, it's my understanding that Alzheimer's disease is associated with adults 65 years of age or older. How common is it?
So it's pretty common. There's nearly 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. 1 in 3 seniors, they die with Alzheimer's or another dementia. It kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined, so
Really?
it's very common. We do know that age is the #1 risk factor, so there's not much we can do about that. Aging just happens. But we also know that this does happen for people that are younger than 65. We've had people even in their 40s develop Alzheimer's type dementia or other types of dementia. It's a little more rare to see it in younger people, but it does happen. So I want to mention that just because sometimes we think it only happens in older adults.
I'm just curious, is their longevity diminished because they've been diagnosed earlier? Or can they live a very long life too?
Yeah, so on average for anybody that's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, from the time of diagnosis to end of life, they have about 6 to 8 years. However, people have been known to live for 20 years. It really depends on couple of factors. One, are they healthy otherwise? And then I think very importantly is what kind of support is around them. So if it's somebody that has the support that is going to help them to remember to take their medications, to get exercise, to just eat even, and have having healthy meals made. All of those things make a difference in terms of longevity.
Can I ask a question? For early onset Alzheimer's, what is the target age when it's considered to be early onset?
So 65 and under is considered an early
So
onset.
someone diagnosed under 65 probably has early onset.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Would you say that the medical community is knowledgeable about Alzheimer's disease and the potential measures for taking care of people with it?
Sure, yeah. So I think there, as a whole, a medical community, there is some, during their schooling, there is some learning about Alzheimer's and dementia. But unless you're a specialist, you're probably not getting the full look at what that means. I think that depending on, if it's something that has impacted them personally, I think that, and because it is so prevalent, it's quite possible that a general practitioner or any medical professional that's, not even in a field that's connected to the brain necessarily, they may be aware of it. But I do think it's important for people to see specialists that are related to brain diseases. So a neurologist is a great way to get connected to getting a diagnosis and then what kind of treatments are available for them that make the most sense for them.
Okay, I know we were speaking before we started the taping, and I thought it was fascinating what you mentioned as far as the genetic component to all of this and how it's far less than I think the general public is aware.
Yeah, so I think there are two different pieces of the genetic component. There is what is called like a risk factor gene that, if you have some people in your family that have been diagnosed or have lived with Alzheimer's disease, it does put you more at risk for developing the disease, but it doesn't mean you will get the disease. It just puts us more at risk. Like in my family, both sides of my family have been impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia, so it does put me more at risk. It doesn't mean I will get it, though. There is a small percent of the population, it's actually less than 5%, that carry a familial deterministic gene. For instance, we work with a family that 6 out of the 7 siblings all developed Alzheimer's at a younger age. It's usually glaringly obvious that there's something going on in that family if there is that familial gene. For most people, it's just a risk, an increased risk. And that's for any disease, really. If you have high blood pressure or heart disease that runs in your family, yes, you're more at risk. So you want to take, precautions to lower that risk as much as possible. But for most people, it is just a risk factor.
Can you speak to the testing that people can go through?
Yeah, so they do have genetic testing that you can go through. You can call our helpline, which we'll reference throughout this program, but it's 800-272-3900, and we can get you connected to where you can go for any sort of genetic testing. But most people, they're going to ask you about, why do you want this genetic testing? What is the purpose for it, and a little bit about your family history to figure out, are you at risk for this deterministic gene, or is it more of just a few people in my family maybe had it, we're not really sure, that kind of thing. They may just not bother with the test because most people, it'll come back saying, yep, you're at risk, and then you already kind of knew that. So,
Right.
I think it's very much individual as to what they want to learn about their genetics. And I know even some of these like ancestry types of, mail away kits even come back saying whether you have, an increased risk or not. But, I think talking to a genetic counselor is probably the best way to go and determine what's right for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you speak to the current research that's going on about Alzheimer's? And,
Yeah.
we'd all be interested to know.
Sure, yeah, it's an exciting time for Alzheimer's research. We are actually, just still learning. We had our Alzheimer's International Conference this summer, and so there's a lot that's rolling out from that. We have, let me back up a little more. There's newer medications that have come out, and that's been about 2 years that they've been on the market, and it seems like they're evolving as they go. Those medications, I will say, they're not appropriate for everybody. And it is important to talk with your neurologist, with your doctor, to make sure that they make sense for each individual. But the idea is that they can help slow the progression of the disease. And up until now, we haven't had that. It's been just treating the symptoms. So those medications are really just for people that are in the early stages of the disease, to help buy more time with independence, which is a really great thing. But it's just the start. This is really just the start of us developing more and more treatments for people, making those treatments easier to get. At this point, that is an infusion drug, which, you have to travel somewhere to get them, and have to figure out what makes sense for your body and what you want to do. But what is exciting is that we're hoping, because these treatments in the earlier stages of the disease are available, we're hoping that people will want to get diagnosed earlier. Now, we're hearing coming out of the Alzheimer's International Conference that there is a blood test that they're looking at to make available to the general public that right now is about 90% accurate, which is really exciting. That will help people to learn that they have a diagnosis much earlier, and then can look at their options to see what makes good sense for them. There's also, I heard about an eye test that they're looking at rolling out. So all of these new diagnostic tools are really exciting, and all of these new medications that we're looking at to help treat the disease are exciting as well. I mean, we're not at a point where we're at a cure yet, but we're starting to see a shift toward a disease-altering treatment, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's exciting.
Can I?
Sure.
I think it's important to talk about the fact that early diagnosis is critical here, because as my wife progressed with her Alzheimer's, she would see things in the newspaper or watch things on TV that would indicate that there's some movement in the treatment of Alzheimer's. She would mention it to me, I'd mention it to a neurologist, and each time it was, she's too far along. So it's very important, if you suspect that Alzheimer's is a factor here, get a diagnosis. So not a diagnosis you want to hear, but it's not going to change what's going to happen. So if you get the early diagnosis, you can take advantage of these new medications that are available. And from everything I've read about them, you'll get significant more time if you take advantage of it.
We haven't discussed this yet, but other than subtle memory losses, is there anything people should be looking at really early in the game? Mm-hmm. And then if you could continue on with, you mentioned that there are different prospects people have, things that they can do preemptively. What would those be?
Sure, yeah. So we actually have a whole program that is called Know the 10 Warning Signs. If anybody is ever interested in hosting that program, call us on our helpline and we can work on getting that in your community. We also have that available online. But just to give you a kind of a snapshot as to what are some of those warning signs to look for, one of the first ones I think that we tend to ignore until hindsight kicks in is withdrawal from social activities. That's a big one, where people don't want to go to the things that they used to want to participate in because probably a lot of reasons. One, maybe they're not remembering that they need to get there to do that thing with their friends that they enjoy. The other is, what if I make a mistake in front of everybody and they figure out what's going on? So withdrawal from social activities is kind of an earlier sign. Struggling with words and speech becomes an issue. trying to find that right word, and we stumble over our words. A lot of people do that, and that's not such a big deal. But if it becomes more and more so, where it's starting to interfere with your ability to communicate with people, that's certainly a warning sign. Organizing your thoughts and organizing the steps that it's going to take in a task and then executing that task. That's a warning sign. If somebody has more and more trouble balancing their checkbook when they never had any issues like that, that's something to look out for. One thing that probably everybody will go, oh no, when they hear this, but misplacing things can be an issue. However, we're all going to misplace things from time to time.
I was going to say,
That's
my mind
not
is
an
going
issue.
crazy here.
It's this second part here that is kind of more of the glaring warning is, so you're misplacing things, but you lose the inability to backtrack and say, okay, where did I last see it? I'm going to try to figure out, how to find it again. Mm-hmm. That's the part that ends up being a warning sign that there's maybe something going on in the brain, is losing that ability to then backtrack and then locate that item. Another warning sign would be losing time and place, not being oriented to, this is the address or the town that I'm in, or even the season, those types of things. People sometimes will start to think, what year is it? So it starts to kind of grow as the disease progresses. From time to time, yes, we're going to go, what day of the week is it? That happens. Not a big deal. And we know how to figure that out. I know that my watch tells me the day of the week. So it's not such a big deal. But if it becomes more of an issue where somebody's starting to miss appointments and not able to use the tools around them to figure things out, that becomes a warning sign for sure.
Good points. So people start to recognize these early signs, or their family do. What options do they have?
Yeah, so I think probably the first thing you want to do is start with your general practitioner. Just mention that this is what we're seeing. Oftentimes they'll run like their regular workups, like a blood test, checking your thyroid levels, making sure all your stuff is in line. And if everything comes back looking like, okay, it's not all those things that we normally test for, they may refer you to a neurologist to see what might be happening. And it's not always Alzheimer's. There could be a lot of other reasons why somebody is experiencing these symptoms. So it's important not to assume that you know what it is, because it could be a whole bunch of different things.
Sure. Wow. Excellent information. I'd now like to reintroduce Bob Kostka, who is a resident of Kingston. And he was a caregiver for his wife of the past 5 years. And please accept my condolences on her passing in January. I've heard wonderful things about the care that you and your family gave her, and so I just thought it was really important and significant that you be here to help in this discussion. So if you could tell us in your own words the physical and emotional toll it takes on caregivers to take care of a family member with Alzheimer's.
I think you talk about the physical part of it. Spouses of people with Alzheimer's are going to tend to be older anyway. So our physical ability to lift somebody out of a chair or something like that is significantly less than it was when we were younger. It depends, of course, on what's happening with the person with Alzheimer's. But my experience was that when I wake up in the morning, I'd lie in bed and say, I really don't want to get up, because I know what I'm going to face today. But you get up and you do it, and a lot of it is not heavy physical stuff, but there's always, my wife was incapable of doing most things, especially in the last couple of years, so everything fell on caregivers. I'm fortunate that I wasn't the only caregiver. And I would like to tell people when they tell me how sorry they are for my experience, I say, you know what, there are literally millions of people going through exactly what I'm going through, who are food insecure and housing insecure. I'm not. So those things I didn't have to worry about. I had to worry about my wife and not worry about all the other peripheral things that can really destroy someone's life for all intents and purposes.
Absolutely.
So that said, the support of my son and daughter-in-law and my daughter were fundamentally necessary for the physical care of my wife. My wife reached a point where she didn't want me involved in her physical care, bathrooms, showers, things like that, which was very troublesome because she needs to be clean. And my daughter and my daughter-in-law stepped in, and there were 2 days on, 2 days off for about the last 2 years, taking care of those things. And without them, I don't know what would have happened to me, to be honest with you. And my son was there supporting me the whole time. It was as good a situation as you can have, given the devastating nature of Alzheimer's.
Sure. So basically, it takes the community. It's very difficult to do
it really
on your
does.
own.
And I want to make sure I give a shout out to First Parish in Kingston, because so many people in that church would show up and take her to Starbucks, take her for a walk, take her for ice cream. She loved ice cream, so they'd take her for ice cream. She'd bring home quarts of ice cream that she would wind up eating over time. And I remember one time thinking, well, you can't have ice cream for supper. And then my son said, why not?
Yeah.
And then when I said, you know what, you're right, why not? What's the harm? Is it going to affect her physically, mentally? You want ice cream, have ice cream.
Right. Yeah. While I have the both of you here, what systems does the Alzheimer's Association have in place to help support people like Bob?
Yeah, sure. So one of the first things, or one of the big things people should take away from this is our 24/7 helpline. It's 365 days a year, people can call us, and there's going to be a person that answers. So that number is 800-272-3900, and it's kind of the gateway to everything else that we do. So we offer, for our programs and services, care consultation, which can be a meeting with one person in the care team. It can include the person with dementia or not. It really just depends on if that's appropriate. It can be a bigger group meeting, just to get everybody on the same page as to here's what's happening and here's our plan. And that plan's going to look different for every individual case that we come across. It's going to be based on what resources are available. We're also going to help people be aware of what resources are available in their community. Because a lot of times, if you haven't done this before, why would you know?
Right.
So it is kind of helping to create this roadmap of, all right, here are the things you should deal with right now, and then here are some things that you want to look at to prepare for in the future, so that you're never having to make a decision in a crisis. And always having plan B, plan C kind of up your sleeve, because we don't always know what's going to happen next.
Right.
Sometimes the caregiver is impacted, where maybe they have to go to the hospital. And so who's taking care of that person while they're in the hospital? Right. Having a plan for those types of things. And that's what we help people to develop. We also have our education programs that we offer out in the community. We partner with basically anybody that will host a program. We are happy to come out and talk to an audience. There's no cost to attend. There's no cost to host. We just want people to be more aware of what is going on, so that they can be educated and make good decisions about that. And then we also have resource sharing and support groups that we offer. Those are in person and they're also online. So it really depends on what works best for you, the timing, what type of group, all of that people can consider and get involved. And these groups are great for sharing information. I think people hear support group and they kind of cringe at that idea. I don't want to share my feelings about things. Some people want to, but it is a healthy outlet. I've heard numerous people say that it's a lifesaver, and I know Bob can speak to that.
Yeah. Yes, Bob, I know you've said very positive things about it and you'd like to promote it, so this is your show.
Relatively early in this process, I learned about the Alzheimer's Association, which I plugged into, and I learned that they had a support group that they were creating for men whose wives have Alzheimer's. So I joined it. It was an 8-week course. So I joined it, and that was 3 years ago. And I still go, even though my wife died, I still go because there's 3 of us who have lost our wives who still go to help the guys who are still there. And one of the really compelling things that I learned is once you get over the denial stage, jump right in and very quickly and take advantage of the resources that are available. Way, way better sooner than later. If you're looking for example, home health care, you want to get home health care in place before you need home health care. If you're talking about a placement in a nursing home or a memory care unit, you want to check them out. You want to pick the place that you want before you need to go there. Because there's waiting lists, especially for the good ones. And if you're waiting till you need it, you're going to spend months dealing with the fallout of not having made that decision early enough.
That's an excellent point.
The group of guys that I'm with, every single one of us said at one time or another, I can't believe I'm involved in a support group. And I think, Jennifer, you talked about maybe changing the name of the group so that people would be more inclined to join it. But I'll tell you, every single one of them, the things that we learned from each other, I don't know where you would get that information elsewhere. People that are in various stages of dealing with the Alzheimer's with their wives are talking about different things. I knew months ahead of time what I was going to be facing. I was preparing myself for it. I was preparing my children for it. So when it happened, it wasn't a big surprise. It wasn't a big shock. It wasn't another one of those depressing, oh no, here comes something else down the pike. You knew it was coming.
Well, and it's got to some extent, relieve some of the stress that you're under.
Absolutely, which is a good point because these meetings are on Zoom. I've got people from New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts that are currently attending it, and we laugh several times every week about something. And sometimes it might be about a guy on his tractor with his cat or something, but we find things to laugh about. We find things to, and quite frankly, we have a wide range of political beliefs, religious beliefs. It doesn't matter.
That could be more stressful.
Yeah, all that matters is we're sharing the fact that we have a wife with Alzheimer's and we're trying to figure out a way through it. One of the things I've learned from it, maybe you can agree with me on it or maybe not, is that early onset Alzheimer's, which I think is what my wife had, because I was dealing with it for about 12 years, but very specifically the last 5 years after the diagnosis. There seems to be a situation, if you have early onset Alzheimer's, that you're sort of on a fairly level plane for a long time. There's a decrease in ability over a fairly long period of time, and then all of a sudden it drops off the ledge. And that's kind of what happened with me. It happened with one of the other people that in the group where we felt we were like in the middle of the group somewhere, and all of a sudden there was a turn, and within a couple of weeks our spouses died.
Wow. Wow. But at least you know you're not alone.
Oh, yeah.
You're not alone.
And again,
other people are
what I
facing the same
learned from
thing.
people about, one of the issues my wife had, for example, was she would like to walk out the door and just go for a walk without telling me. And we live on a street that doesn't have sidewalks, so it was really kind of scary. And I would mention that to the group, and all these interesting ideas on how to handle it with the watch that you can get with, we wound up having to put different locks on our doors so she couldn't get out of the house. But all of this information is shared by all of the people in these groups, and you learn, well, how about keeping the bed from getting wet at night? Because, well, there's a solution. You want to talk about almost everything, somebody came up with a solution or suggested a solution that might help. Sometimes there were solutions that I thought would help, but it was already too late for my wife. For example, we got one of those devices that you put the pictures on, and I thought having a rolling of the pictures would help. She looked at it for about 2 minutes and just walked away. It was...
Yeah, it's appropriate. I'm sure the question is being asked, do they have a women's support group who are taking care of?
Yeah, so we have a variety of groups. Some are specific to male caregivers. We do actually find that most of the time it is just our general support group is made up of women. So that is why we wanted to create one specific to male caregivers, just because we felt like, well, maybe they're just not comfortable in a more general setting. We also have a support group that is specific to LGBTQ caregivers. So we always are trying to figure out what is a group that feels like they might want their own specific group. And if we can find somebody to help us to facilitate that, we are open to offering it for sure. Yeah.
Well, I can't thank the two of you enough. I mean, this is very valuable information. We have to wrap it up, but is there any final words you would like to say?
Yeah. So one thing I just want to mention and invite people to is because all of our we're able to offer all of our programs and services at no cost to families, so they can call our helpline, they can come to our education programs, support groups, care consultation. All of that is free because of things like our Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is coming up they're across the nation during the fall, but the one that is local to here is at the Nelson Memorial Park in Plymouth, and that's going to take place on October 19th. There's no fundraising minimum, even if you don't raise any funds and you just want to come and be part of the ceremony, walk the route, be part of it, and just feel part of the community. It does open up the door. It's like a gentle hug from the Alzheimer's Association, just to feel like you're part of this community. We do care. We do know people's individual stories, and it's a great way to get connected to the various resources. There'll be a resource tent, so you can learn more about what local resources are available to you, and you can come talk to us at the Alzheimer's Association table too.
Wonderful. And that's October 19th?
Yes.
Okay. And Bob?
Yeah, one of the members of our group, in fact, the first one that lost his wife, attended a bereavement group. And after a couple of visits, he came back to us. And he said he felt more heard and more listened to and more understood in our group than in the bereavement group he had. And I think that's very much a male thing. I think males look to other males for the kind of support because, again, we're sharing a lot of the same problems and concerns.
You get it.
And we're talking about a lot of these people are very well-educated people, and they've done a lot of research. One of the advantages being part of that group was people in that group did research that I didn't have to do. They provided information from that research, saving me the trouble of having to do it.
Right.
So I highly recommend, and again, sooner rather than later.
Okay.
The sooner you get involved in any kind of Alzheimer's care, the better the outcome is going to be. You'll be able to extend the cognitive life of your patient for a fairly significant period of time.
Well, wonderful way to end. Again, thank you so much,
Thank
both
you.
of you, for all you've done for Alzheimer's disease and getting the word out there about it and support for families who have Alzheimer's as an issue. We're fortunate to have the two of you.
Thank you.
So take care, be safe and healthy.